background this morning. If you're just joining us, maybe you've listened to the show for the first time, well, you found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're broadcasting live across the state of Arkansas, but as well as online, so, technically worldwide. You can find out more, facebook.com/Conduit News. Believe it or not, I've had a listener listen to this program before from Australia. Believe it or not. Remember that? Yeah, he called. Remember, that was a long, how many years? What is that, a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that? Anyway, people listen to this program all the way from down under. We got a great show for you coming up. Let's see, at the top of the next hour, we'll be talking with Mr. Josh Waters. He's going to be back on the program. We're going to be going over a few bills. You see, it is the Conduit for Action scorecard. It's a weekly scorecard while the Arkansas General Assembly is down at the Marble Palace, while they're down there passing bills, filing bills, voting on bills. And so the CFA scorecard is out week number 2, and that's over. You can go find that at conduitnews.com if you'd like, kind of figure out the bills that are on the radar. We're going to go over those bills coming up at 7:05. Then at 7:33, we will be talking with the head of the Libertarian Party of Arkansas. That's right. Michael Packo is going to be on the program. Dr. Michael Packo. It's always great to have him on. Now, the reason he's coming back on is because there is a bill that has been filed by Senator Trent Garner that would increase the petition threshold in order to get on the ballot. It's pretty much normally a round number, and because the Libertarians didn't get 3%, Mark West got 2.9%, but because they didn't get 3%, they're not automatically put on the ballot next year. They don't automatically have ballot access, which means in order for a Libertarian to get on the ballot, they have to go and get petitions or signatures. They have to petition, and so normally that's a round number, about 10,000. If Senator Garner's bill passed, that number would go to 26,000, which just, costs a lot more money. So I saw where Dr. Packo was in the news talking about how bad this bill would be for the Libertarians, and so I thought I'd offer to have the Libertarians on to talk about it. So that's coming up at 7:33. All right, let's start with the national news, though, shall we? The government's reopened. We've got a State of the Union address, not tonight, but a week from today. Nancy Pelosi finally relenting, and I do say that. I think she did relent, and she asked the president, said, okay, you can come to the State of the Union now. President said, okay, all right, I'll come to the State of the Union. We've got this ridiculous headline, though. This is so frustrating. Politico, the Democrats are going to fill the balcony with dreamers for the State of the Union. I mean, this is so ridiculous. Now, the president's going to fill the balcony with angel moms, you would think. People who have had family members, moms who've had their son or their daughter be taken from them, murdered by an illegal alien. Okay, so it's a preventable death. They shouldn't have been here in the first place. Now, you would think, okay, well, you got angel moms and you got dreamers and everything else. The Democrat Party is just shameless. Now, I know you know that, but I feel the need to point it out. They're just absolutely shameless here. President Trump, it's not like the Democrats care about dreamers. The Democrats don't care about dreamers. We talked about this yesterday. The Democrat Party wants the dreamers only as political tools, and Nancy Pelosi's proving my point from yesterday. You had a chance to actually help the dreamers. You could have even come to the negotiating table and asked for more than a 3-year delay or whatever, but you didn't. Instead, you just think the wall and border security is immoral, and we don't want President Trump to get any kind. We just hate President Trump. And that is no way to govern at all. And I just find it extremely offensive. I wonder if there are any dreamers out there that even know what the Democrat Party has just done to you during this last shutdown. What the president is probably willing to do right now for dreamers that a lot of conservatives and people on the right would be upset with, but he's willing to do it to get wall funding. And yet the Democrat Party, they're saying, even now, that there's probably going to be a second government shutdown because the Democrats just won't negotiate. They will not. And yet the president has given the Democrats and some Republicans exactly what they wanted. We're going to open the government for 3 weeks. We'll negotiate. We'll see how serious you are. So anyway, it's just frustrating that they're going to fill the balconies with dreamers. Okay, yeah. I hope if that's the case, President Trump addresses them directly. I hope he does. I hope he says, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I hope you know what? It would be a bold move if the president put some dreamers up there. It'd be a bold move. It'd be a bold move if the president invited some of his own dreamers to sit right next to the angel moms and say, you know, I'm just telling you, craft a speech about unity or something like that. And we've got these giant problems and we can solve them, but we can't let politics get involved. A border wall is not immoral. And then you could talk about the plight of the dreamer, of the DACA kids as well, and how that's not a good situation either. We can agree on that. It's not an ideal situation. It's a problem. And it's both parties' fault, and now it's up to both parties to fix it. For decades, it has been a crisis on the border. For decades, we have had Republicans and Democrats that don't care to really fix the problem. We have a news media that hasn't really been telling the American people for decades what's really going on at the border. And here we go. I mean, it really is a good opportunity, but we'll see what happens. I look for President Trump to really impress next Tuesday at the State of the Union. A lot of people are asking about Roger Stone. We talked to you about that on Friday when he was arrested. FBI agents going into his house, guns drawn. A lot of people talking about how that process just doesn't make any sense. I mean, why are they doing this in terms of how they arrested Roger Stone? It's not like Roger Stone's a flight risk. I mean, come on. The guy. Did anybody see his press conference after he was released on $250,000 bail? Oh, my gosh. It was a spectacle, man. It was a spectacle. I mean, it's like something out of a movie. This guy has really never met a camera that he doesn't like in any situation. He started his press conference by saying, "You guys are talking about me. You guys are talking about me, and that's a good thing. Whether it's bad or good, it's a good thing for me." I thought that was pretty funny. You know what I think about Roger Stone, and I haven't heard this anywhere, but there's all this talk about WikiLeaks and whether or not Roger Stone had connection with WikiLeaks and everything else. And I've, if you look over the indictment, I've read the indictment, but I've also read some people's analysis, on Twitter and things like that. And one theory is that Roger Stone publicly kind of overstated his influence or connections to WikiLeaks or advanced knowledge. Kind of, because, he is a media personality and he does do media interviews and things like that. And this one guy said it kind of feels like he was so committed to a certain level of influence that he actually asked the guy to keep the ruse up and asked the guy to lie to Congress. Now, I think all in an effort to say, hey, I'm kind of more of a bigger deal than I am on this particular subject. Which, if you know anything about Roger Stone, or at least you've watched him, or again that documentary I've told people about, Get Me Roger Stone, that version of events kind of makes sense to me. Kind of makes sense. But let's put that aside. It is nothing to do about Russia collusion. I mean, that thing is that whole concept of Russia collusion has been really debunked with each arrest. But if we're going to talk about lying to Congress, which, hey, if you did lie to Congress or you told somebody else to lie to Congress or whatever, yeah, that is a crime. That is a crime. That is setting a very interesting precedent, though, isn't it? So, Congressman, let me see here. Where did this go? Oh, yeah, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Is that how you say his last name? Matt Gaetz. So he's a congressman from Florida. And he tweeted this out, which is it's a Tucker Carlson clip from his Fox News show. And Matt Gaetz, Congressman Gaetz, says, if lying to Congress is an enforceable crime, we are going to need more jails. Hashtag Roger Stone, hashtag Comey, hashtag Hillary, hashtag Clapper. Joe, I would like to listen to this video. It is fantastic. It's right there on Twitter. If you just scroll down on that same article right there that you're on. No. On the yeah, it's a zerohedge.com article. And yeah, right here, this is what we want to hear. What Congressman Gaetz tweeted this. So listen to this. This is great.
Apparently, it's now an enforceable felony to lie to the U.S. Congress. If you're going to enforce statutes, you have to enforce them fairly and evenly.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
James Clapper.
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly.
Clapper lied. He's a liar. There's no debate about that. And yet he wasn't charged.
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never.
Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No. According to Comey's longtime deputy, what Comey said on the tape you just saw is totally untrue.
Do you know if the Bureau ever relied on the Steele dossier as part of any court filings, applications, petitions,
CIA,
pleadings?
I have no awareness.
Did the CIA rely on it?
No. It was not in any way used as a basis for the intelligence community assessment that was done.
Yeah, that's a total lie.
There was nothing marked classified on my emails, either sent or received.
Is that true? According to the director of the FBI, no, it is not true.
All right, so that's end the double standard. Okay, so I want to refer. Does anyone remember the news reports back before Christmas? Donald Trump retweeted a photo that had James Clapper, James Comey, John Brennan behind bars, like in a jail cell. Do you remember that? He got a lot of people can't believe he did that. Well, I mean, you say what you want. If you're going to enforce it on Roger Stone for lying to Congress, my goodness, the director of national intelligence said the NSA wasn't collecting our data. That's completely untrue. I mean, it's just insane. James Clapper. Then John Brennan. John Brennan saying the Steele dossier was not part of their assessment. That is now verifiably false. James Comey said he was never a leaker. That is now false. He leaked classified intel to his friend at that university to be the source for the New York Times story. We know all of these things. And Hillary Clinton saying there was no classified. We know that that's a lie. Okay, well, I mean, where are the 30 armed FBI agents that are busting through their door this morning? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we can be hopeful and optimistic. Maybe it will happen. I don't know. Can you imagine? If that were to happen? That'd be crazy. Okay, we're going to take a break and reset here. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about highway funding at the bottom of this next hour. So don't go anywhere, folks. Thanks for listening.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
We want to welcome back to the program. We got State Representative Dan Sullivan in the studio with us. Dan, welcome, sir.
Hey, Paul. Thank you for inviting me. Always enjoy coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're, the third week of session? How things are going so far?
Well, they're going really well. I had a meeting this weekend with a group. I met with a group. They were meeting, and they'd have met with or without me. But, I had the feeling during that meeting that I was right back with the founders. People sitting down, discussing the Constitution, discussing their rights. And I'm not going to mention what group it was, but it was really refreshing and incredible to sit there for an hour and a half. Nobody left. Nobody got up. And we talked about what our constitutional rights are. We talked about what our God-given constitutional rights are. It was really curious.
This is mother government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are 2 matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on this subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Okay, so because everyone is talking about Roger Stone and WikiLeaks, and this is now part of the news narrative for the next couple of days, we have Sarah Sanders, who was asked yesterday during the press conference, the White House press briefing, about WikiLeaks. Should it be a crime? That's because, unfortunately, and I say this, it is unfortunate that Marco Rubio suggested that anyone who has any connection to WikiLeaks is committing a crime here in some capacity. Let's go ahead and, this is from the Gateway Pundit, by the way. Headline, Sarah Sanders asked if working with WikiLeaks should be a crime. And this is her response. Scroll down there. There she is. Go ahead.
Marco Rubio said over the weekend that working with WikiLeaks should be considered a crime. Does the president agree?
Look, I think every single outlet that you all represent looked for and searched for information that WikiLeaks was providing, including reporting on it. So I think there's a responsibility by members of the media. I'm not aware of anybody here ever working with WikiLeaks in any capacity, but I do know that every individual that represents a media organization here looked for that information. Most of you reported on that information, so I think you're just as accountable as anybody else in that process.
That's a really good answer from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and they're really trying to set her up there. That's exactly right. Marco Rubio, and you know, it's very sad. Anyone who works with WikiLeaks should be charged with a crime. That is a ridiculous statement that is anti-freedom of the press. It's fundamentally anti-freedom of the press. I don't know about you, and listen, I know people have stolen things, stolen data, and given it to WikiLeaks. I know that. I know people have committed crimes by, stealing data. I'm thinking of that Bradley Manning guy that then had the sex change operation, and I know everyone's upset about that. I get that, but the fact is, WikiLeaks and their the things that they've exposed, I think generally is good. I think it's exposed the deep state. I think it's exposed big government. I think it's exposed a lot of elites that wanted to remain secret. Everything from what happened with Hillary Clinton and the Democrats' emails and everything else to worldwide stuff, global things that have been that have been revealed by WikiLeaks. I'm glad we had the information. I would rather know than not know. I don't know about you. I don't know about any of you, but wouldn't you have rather known all of the stuff in Hillary Clinton's emails? Wouldn't you have rather known that she had a secret server and everything else? Like, I think all that information is much better. I think it makes people, enables people to make more educated decisions. So that's my stance on it. I mean, there's no question that WikiLeaks has stuff that, the United States government would rather it not have. There's no question that WikiLeaks is in the possession of information that governments all over the world wish it did not have. I get that. And I don't, I would certainly, condemn WikiLeaks if they're going to release something and it's going to cause somebody to be killed or one of our assets to be compromised and that sort of thing. Yeah, you don't want that to happen at all. And you would hope that somebody, an organization like WikiLeaks would be responsible with information. They don't want they don't want anybody to die. You would think. I mean, I'm definitely not going to assume worse motives that they're out to, for people to die with the information they have. But anyway, it's a crime if you work with WikiLeaks. Give me a break. Give me a break. Come on, Marco. Stand on the side of freedom of the press. Why don't you? If it wasn't for WikiLeaks, I think this world. You know what? If it wasn't for WikiLeaks, you could easily say we'd have a President Hillary Clinton in the White House. Okay, and well, it's a possibility. I mean, the Democrats are convinced of this. That's why they want you to think that Donald Trump is somehow a KGB agent and everything else. So Kamala Extract Harris is now saying that it is inhumane to protect DACA kids but not the parents. Kamala Extract Harris is now saying she will not vote for the wall under any circumstances. Okay, all right, well, we're just going to wait for this national emergency to take place then. I mean, that's what we're waiting on now. The more and more this happens, when people say you're not going to vote for a wall in any circumstances, the Democrat Party used to love voting for fences, barriers, walls, whatever you want to call it. Kamala Extract Harris. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm calling, if you're a fan of Battlestar Galactica, this is a very obscure joke. But Kamala Harris is going to run for president. We're going to talk about her, I'm sure, a lot. You're going to hear a lot. I cannot hear her first name, Kamala, without putting the word extract, because it's a science fiction drug from the Battlestar Galactica universe. Kamala is Kamala Extract. It's anyway. And so I can't help it. Her name to me is Kamala Extract Harris. All right. We're going to take a break. Going to reset here. The Democrat Gazette with this piece here. We're going to go over road funding bill, a compromise. State Representative Dan Douglas has filed a bill he calls a compromise. The governor coming out saying he does not support it. We'll give you those details. We'll talk more about that as well, by the way, coming up at the top of the next hour with Mr. Josh Waters and the Conduit Scorecard, Week 2 of the Scorecard. Don't go anywhere.
Yes, because I was anxious or interested in what would happen in church yesterday about the discussion of the new issue in New York, and I know you talk about that extensively.
Oh my gosh!
Where people cheered about the abortion rights and about the ability of a state who can now, if a child survives abortion, they can kill the baby. And I fully expected from our church to have a prayer about that, and for our nation to be healed, and for us to repent, just not only as a state of Arkansas, but as a nation. And I'm really concerned that our pulpits are silent on this issue and not standing up. And so when I asked a few people after church what they thought about that, they were, well, that's just not our style. We don't talk about that that way. We don't address those issues that way. And I started thinking about the group that I met with on Saturday and how they understood that those rights are God-given and that the government should make no law that supersedes God's law. And I thought about people's unwillingness in the setting on Sunday to stand up and talk about our God-given rights compared to the people on Saturday who were talking about their God-given rights. And I'm really concerned that our faith-based community, their willingness to stand up for what God says, which is now being superseded by what the state says. And people need to realize that there are Arkansas legislators right now crafting language that about abortion, about free speech, about Second Amendment, that would limit our God-given rights and let government supersede those. I hope I'm not digging down too deep in that, but it's really concerning.
But people have to stay engaged.
Stay engaged, and it was so refreshing to hear people. And I know there's a new organization being founded, the Freedom Coalition, I think.
You mean the Arkansas Liberty Coalition?
Liberty Coalition,
yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. Now the Patriots of Act 746, 17,000 strong, have a voice. And I sure hope people will seriously consider what's going on with the Liberty Coalition. Look into that, because we and people need to speak up about their rights.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Now, you mentioned a bunch of stuff there, but you also mentioned freedom of speech. Now,
yes.
There was a story, and there's an ongoing lawsuit because of Arkansas State University, my alma mater, and freedom of speech zones, or there was a Turning Point USA attempted to, I think, set up a booth in
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Before we talk about Arkansas's roads, did anybody see this video? This was hilarious to me. So CNN, this guy named Seth Morton, not really sure who he is, but I saw this posted. This guy named Seth Morton on Twitter has a video here. Furloughed workers who were both affected by the government shutdown shock CNN's Victor Blackwell by saying they stand with President Trump and supported the shutdown for a wall. Listen.
The president says that many of the federal workers who were not being paid for the last 5 weeks supported what he was doing with the shutdown. Are you in that number? Did you support the shutdown?
Yes.
Okay, so you supported the shutdown, even considering what it did to your family personally?
Yes, absolutely. If it's going to defend our country and keep illegals out, keep people from coming here and hurting my children that don't belong here, yes, I'm all for the wall.
Wow. Yep, there you go. Boy, you know CNN was like, cut away. We've got some breaking news story somewhere we can talk about. That's pretty good. So State Representative Andy Davis, we were playing audio of State Representative Andy Davis last week. He was running the governor's transformation bill. I'm just giving you this for a reminder. And there seemed to be, by the way, in the government transformation bill, there seemed to be questions from both the Senate committee and the House committee on where they're getting a number. They claim that it's going to save $15 million, but nobody can show them any math, or at least they didn't have the math at the time. Let's assume that they can show the math, and they're going to get those numbers to Senator Caldwell, Senator Bond, and Hickey. I think, right? Is it Senator Hickey? Anyway, so they're going to get those numbers, and they have the same questions were asked in the House committee, which is good. I mean, this is really good. This is the legislative process working out. People want to know, okay, well, if it's going to save, well, let me see the numbers. Well, State Representative Andy Davis went on Roby Brock's show, Talk Business and Politics. There's a story up about it, talkbusinessandpolitics.net. Representative Andy Davis, quote, everything on the table for potential highway program. Quote, everything on the table. Roby Brock writing that a permanent half-cent sales tax for roads, an increase in the motor fuel tax, registration fees, revenue transfers, and reforming the procurement process. That is basically everything on the table. It's all ideas being floated to craft a highway plan, according to Representative Andy Davis, a Republican from Little Rock, who's one of several lawmakers in the middle of the discussions. Okay, so that's Andy Davis. He appeared over the weekend on Talk Business and Politics. Fast forward to this morning, John Moritz, headline, Road Funding Bill, a Compromise Sponsor Says. And we have State Representative Dan Douglas, who is putting out a bill that he calls a compromise to start the conversation going. Quote, it's called compromise, a word we never use down here, he said. And let's see here. It's HB 1260, right? It's a hybrid of two separate bills, according to the reports, that have been filed in past legislative sessions. And it's trying to raise $240 million more than what their current tax system is. That's a lot of money. An additional 240 million people from the people a year for road construction. Okay, so let's take this one at a time. And I think the story does a good job here. The Gazette does a good job here. General revenue. Okay, general revenue. Now, that is a no-no. No, not for me. I mean, I'm just saying Governor Asa Hutchinson, for the 4 or 5 years, 4 years he's been governor, general revenue, dipping into general revenue to fund highways, even though other states do it, right? Other states do this. The governor just is not receptive to it. Now, I don't know why, but he's not receptive to it. I don't know if he thinks that it's not a long-term strategy. We're not talking about a lot of money here, though. We're just talking about a little bit of money from the general revenue every year, right? And can you imagine if we had done this 4 years ago? Meaning 4 years ago, if we would have put in a policy or a law, a practice to where we do dip into the general revenue fund just a little bit. And what if you would have taken that money, that little bit of money, and actually put it somewhere, put it like kind of as a rainy day or let it accrue somewhere? I think we'd be talking about a good amount of money at this point. But I'm terrible with math, but it's just an idea. So legislators want to do this. That, from what I can tell, it's in Dan Douglas's bill. He wants to do this. He thinks that there's some formula out there to fund our roads and use general revenue, meaning that's existing tax revenue, right? Now, let me just be honest here. From what I can see right now, we're heading towards a tax increase on this. I don't see how they're not going to head towards a vote of a tax increase in some capacity. This actually is a bill that we can respect, though. In terms of, it's going to be, they're actually, according to Dan Douglas's bill, it will actually be a vote for or against a tax increase. It's not going to be this, well, let's refer it out to the people, and then we can be like, well, it wasn't me. I didn't vote for a tax increase. I just voted to refer it out to the people. One element would transfer state general revenue to road construction. Regular road construction accounts use non-general revenue generated largely from motor fuel taxes, vehicle registration fees, which raise about $438 million a year. Gosh. So right now, folks, I want you to think about that. Right now, we're already giving them $438 million a year for state highways with your registration fees, with your taxes that you're paying on motor fuel right now. You're already giving them and they want an additional $200-something million, $240 million more. We're already giving them money to do these things, but they need more of it because they don't have enough of it, because we spend the other money that we give the government on other things that are not roads. HB 1260 would cap the revenue transfer at $120 million a year. So it couldn't go above $120 million a year from the general revenue. There was a bill that Douglas filed in 2015 that contained no cap. Okay, all right, so Dan Douglas, State Representative Douglas, was, he's all for the general revenue, but he used to have no cap, and now he's putting a bill that says it does have a cap. Okay, well, he's kind of coming off of his former position there. The latest version of the bill would begin to transfer general revenue, unit sales, and use tax collections hit $2.5 billion annually. Okay, so they're saying that you wouldn't even have any general revenue transfers to the highway fund until sales and use tax collection hit $2.5 billion a year annually. Well, I don't think we're anywhere close to that. I could be wrong. In the first fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2018, the state collected $2.337 billion. Okay, there we go. Well, so we are kind of close, but I'd want to see how fast is that revenue increasing? They're saying that this year they're expected to get $2.4 billion. So maybe it's going up. If it goes from 0.3 to 0.4, maybe it'll be at 0.5 next year, I guess. But then there's a tax increase here in this bill. Dan Douglas's bill has a tax increase. It would add a 3.5% sales tax on the wholesale price of fuel, which would be the equivalent of adding 5 or 6 cents to a gallon of fuel and raise another $120 million a year. Okay, this is a rehash of the issue that was talked about last session. They wanted to refer it to the people. Oh, and by the way, it had a deceptive title too. I would expect that it might have, if they do go the referral route, that it might have a deceptive title again, where it's just about bonds, and there's nothing in there about how this is a tax increase on the people. But isn't it interesting that if you put a sales tax, if you put a 3.5% sales tax on the wholesale price of fuel, it translates to 5 or 6 cents a gallon in terms of people pass tax increases on to who? If you tax the source, they're going to pass the tax increase on to the consumer, because that's how it works. Corporations don't pay taxes. The people pay the taxes because the businesses just increase their prices. That's how it all works. Now, in 2017, the old version of the bill, it wasn't 3.5%. It wasn't a proposal of 3.5% tax increase. It was a proposal of 6.5%. Under this new bill, again, it's HB 1260. We'll talk about it more with Josh Waters, I'm sure, coming up at 7:05. 70% of the revenue raised, which would be about $168 million, would go to the Arkansas Department of Transportation under the state's traditional formula of distributing funds for road building. The remaining $82 million would be split evenly between cities and counties, also a tradition. Douglas quoted in the Gazette as saying, "I'm just putting something out there. We're going to get the conversation started. We're not going to wait until the end of the session to talk highways. We're going to talk it now and get something done for highways." Now, that's interesting, because the highway situation, they did kind of wait towards the end of the session. I remember that 2 years ago. And I will say that this quote does seem similar when we were talking with the majority leader, Republican Marcus Richmond, on the program a few weeks ago. He seemed to encourage this process, that whatever you want to do, like whatever bill, whatever issue, whether it's highways or whatever, we want to make sure that you get it filed early enough to where we have talked about it, we have debated it, we know there's not going to be anybody that can go down there and plead ignorance, like, oh, I didn't know the bill said this. It was really a refreshing goal anyway, just to be completely, we're not going to try to rush anything through. Let's take time. Let's have the debate. And I think that's a good thing. Now, the governor says no to this, though. He does not support this bill at all. He wants a new highway funding plan, and he's quoted as saying, "While I appreciate Representative Douglas's focus on finding a long-term highway funding plan, I cannot support it." This is what he said through his spokesman. "Pulling additional money from general revenue is not the answer. We are already devoting $50 million a year from state revenue to the highway department. Doing more will only create new problems elsewhere and will negatively impact education, prisons, public safety, and more." Wow. That sounds a lot like pain point politics to me, by the way. A lot like pain point politics. Now, keep in mind, one of the other things that they're talking about doing on highways is to extend a half-cent sales tax that we voted on in 2012. Back in 2012, there was a highway bill that was going to fund specific construction projects, and it went to the vote of the people. The people passed it, a half-cent sales tax, but it was a temporary half-cent sales tax, and it's set to expire soon. Well, under the governor's plan, there is a move and an effort to extend that half-cent sales tax, even though what the people voted on was for it to sunset. Now, I don't know about you, but that just doesn't seem right to a lot of people out there, myself included. That just doesn't seem like that's good government. To tell the people one thing, people voted for it assuming that this was the agreement, and then you're not going to allow the tax to sunset. And then we're going to have to, and if they go forward with this, then we're going to have this whole debate. People are going to be like, well, I'm not voting for a tax increase because the tax people are already paying the tax, so I'm not voting for a tax increase. Am I? Somebody help me. Give me my talking points. I'm not voting for a tax increase, am I? Because we're already paying the tax. Unfortunately, yes, you are voting for a tax increase, because if it's due to sunset and you're making it permanent or even extending it past what the original contract was with the people, you're voting for a tax increase. I hate to tell you. I hate it for you. I hate that you're in these tough situations. But we should at least agree on the definitions of words and phrases so that we can accurately stand by with confidence your votes. And I would encourage all of you to do that out there, to be able to stand by with confidence about how you voted and not care what the characterization is, in terms of if it's an accurate one. Be ready to go back to your constituents and convince them with the argument of why less money going to the government is good, or why we need more money from the people in the form of a tax increase, whether it's gas or whatever. So the Gazette writing here that there's one Democratic lawmaker that has concerns with Douglas's bill, as well as the Republican governor. And it is Representative Andrew Collins, a Democrat of Little Rock. Quote, general revenue goes to schools, goes to important health priorities. Health priorities. And we have not traditionally diverted general revenue to highways in our state for good reason, I believe. So I'll be looking for a solution that does not tap into general revenue. In its current form, this bill does tap into general revenue and would not be acceptable to me. So, again, can you imagine if we had tapped into general revenue 4 years ago? I don't think we would have this issue. It wouldn't be as big of a deal as it is right now. But you know what I would also remind you, if you're scratching your head right now, if you're listening to this program the first time and you're thinking to yourself, gee, golly, we have massive Republican majorities in the House and massive Republican majorities in the Senate here in Arkansas, and a Republican governor, why are we talking about having to raise taxes at all? Well, I would tell you the reason that we have to raise taxes is because we have overextended ourselves by implementing Medicaid expansion. That is now a fact. The state of Arkansas continues to have to pay more and more for Obamacare Medicaid expansion recipients. A program that was only supposed to have, 200,000 people on it. It ballooned up to over 300,000. I know it's below that threshold now. I don't know what the exact number is, but that doesn't even matter. It was predicted, let's see, what's this, the 2019. So it was 4 years ago, it was predicted that Arkansas' share of Medicaid expansion that we have to pay, the feds pay and we pay, we split the cost, that our share would be $50 million by this year. Well, that estimate was wrong, and we owe $138 million this year, and we're going to owe even more than that next year, and even more than that the next year after that. So, that's real money here. They're trying to raise our taxes, on this $240 million. They're trying to get a revenue transfer of $120 million. Like Dan Douglas's bill, it's got tax increases in it, which is a terrible thing. But they're trying to take $120 million from general revenue. If we didn't have Medicaid expansion, if we didn't have to allocate $138 million this year towards Medicaid expansion, you could take not only $120 million from general revenue, theoretically you could take $138 million from general revenue. So if you're confused and you don't know why we are in this position, you have to go all the way back to 2013, and you have to be like, wow, we expanded government in Arkansas to where 1 million people, we went from, 700,000 people on Medicaid to adding 300,000 more to where essentially 1/3 of our population now is on Medicaid, and that's a really, really difficult welfare state to maintain. Okay, so we're going to take a break here, going to reset, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Get people to sign up for that organization, and they were prevented from doing so, and that resulted in a lawsuit, correct? Kind of refresh our memory on that.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that lawsuit is still standing, and as a matter of fact, across the state, in many of our universities, we have varying degrees of limits on free speech. Again, another God-given right.
Yeah.
I, along with Senator Hammer and several other senators and House members, have been working on a free speech bill. We'll be filing it. I think it may have been filed Friday, but it'll be filed this week, that will eliminate those free speech zones. It goes a long way towards protecting our religious organizations that are on campus too. Many of our churches have student centers and such on campus, and while many of our universities are friendly towards that, their policies are not. And often it's a matter that they just choose not to enforce a policy. So this bill will go a long way towards allowing free speech on campus.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, tell me what you think. Tell me what you guys think. You guys want to give more money? I mean, do the people really want to give the government more money for roads? Now, do you want better roads? The answer is absolutely we want better roads. I want better roads. However, I don't think we need to be giving the government any more money to get those roads, but that's just me. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, how much is enough? I guess that, and it's inevitably going to come to this question. For those of you who think, well, we just need to raise taxes one more time. Well, I mean, you understand how that's frustrating to us? We just got to raise it one more time. We know that's not true. Is it the last time? You know what? Maybe I'd be on board with it if you told me this is the last time. That we'll never do. But you can't tell me that. But the pattern is that, well, we need more and more and more and more and more of the people's money. And that is unsustainable. I mean, there is a point to where you take too much of the people's money. And that's what we need to... there is a line, right? Well, I mean, we need to be asking the questions of what are we spending our money on now that we shouldn't be? Because, I mean, the vast majority of Arkansans agree that government should make roads. I mean, we could have the debate. That's a whole nother debate. But most of us agree, you know. Okay, yeah, the government can build roads, that sort of thing. Okay. So what's the big deal? You think this should be top priority? Not to raise taxes, but to do the one thing we're already giving you money to do? And if that means you got to take money out of general revenue, then take money out of general revenue. That's what we're paying you for.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Getting rid of those free speech zones, protecting our organizations and such that are on campus. That should be filed this week, and I look forward to that passing.
Now, so there's another one. There's another freedom of speech bill that has been filed as well. That's already been filed. This one with this. So, do you know about the other one? What's the difference between?
Well, Representative Hammer and I both had bills on that.
Okay.
And we got together, and now there'll be one bill that goes forward.
Okay, so it's going to be one.
Yeah, it's part of that good legislative process where you have people who both have an idea about freedom and liberty who sit down together and work through it. You know, the big question out there, Paul, there's a continuum. You know, what kind of language do you allow that doesn't cause a disruption on campus? You know, to use foul language, and there are words that can be used, language that can be used, insightful language that can be used, that can be disruptive on a college campus. So you have to draw a line somewhere as to what's allowed and what's disallowed to allow the university to have some control over speech. They need that over the freedom of speech. So Senator Hammer's bill and mine had a little bit different language in there, and we sat down together and worked that out. So we think it has the right tone about giving the university the opportunity and the responsibility of controlling chaos on campus, what might lead to chaos on campus, but also allowing free speech. And I think we reached a good settlement on that.
Okay, so both bills were trying to solve a problem. And you
which was limiting free speech on campus.
Yeah. We don't want that. We don't want that.
We want free speech on campus. We've gone a long way towards getting rid of these free speech zones.
Okay, good.
Gone a long way towards allowing not just students, but people like you and me to go on campus and talk about what free speech is.
Okay, so that'll be filed this week. What else we got going on?
Well, I'm working with Senator Gary Stubblefield, and I'm going to be the one to carry his bill in the House. He's the one that worked on it, but it's very similar to Mark Johnson's bill about retirement benefits and removing those retirement benefits.
So it's an anti-corruption bill.
Anti-corruption ethics bill, yes, and it is a little bit different than Senator Johnson's, and that it takes a few different remedies. So I'm hopeful that, again, Senator Stubblefield's the lead on this, and I would anticipate he and Senator Johnson probably getting together. But you'll see some good ethics legislation come out, regardless of what it is. But it's pretty strong. When you start taking people's retirement, one of the differences, our Senator Stubblefield's bill talks about when you're convicted of a crime. And there's just a little bit different language in there, but both of them, again, well-intended and doing the right thing, moving in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are the discussions that need to be had. That's what's so positive about it.
Yeah, and that's what really encouraged me Saturday, to hear people talking about these issues. How many groups are there in the state that really talk about what the Constitution says, really stands up for your rights? Conduit is one. You can agree or disagree with them, but there are very few organizations in the state that really lay on the table what your constitutional rights are. And then let's just have the debate. And I've had several debates with Conduit. I agree on some things, disagree on a few things, but we've been able to come on the show and have that debate. And it really, I hadn't thought of this before, but that's exactly what happened at the founding. People talked about what the Constitution said. They talked about what your rights were, and we had that open debate. And I sure hope the citizens of Arkansas will look for, and of course, I think your listeners are on the forefront of that. But at this meeting where I was Saturday, I met a lot of people, first-time people, hadn't really been to a debate like that. I invited somebody, so it's really good to hear that. We're just talking about other legislation we have coming out. I'm working on the advanced practice nurse legislation that's been defeated twice.
Yep.
And much more than twice. I've run it twice.
Well, the one thing about that advanced practice nurse piece of legislation that the medical community needs to understand is that if it passes, the sky will fall.
Well, they have hired more lobbyists.
Oh, I'm sure.
They've hired a bunch of lobbyists coming up, and, I have running legislation with UAMS that deals with UAMS, and UAMS lost $30 million last year. They
when you say lost, you mean like lost it or lost it?
Well,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. Hour number 2. Hour number 1 is in the can. Hour number 2, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. 90 seconds General Assembly coverage. We got some bills that have been filed, bills that Conduit for Action is watching, and here now to talk about week number 2, the scorecard, week number 2. We have Mr. Josh Waters on the phone. Josh, how are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Paul. I'm doing good.
I am pretty excited about some of these bills. You know, they seem to be good. About what's on the radar for this week, and of course, this weekly scorecard. Eventually, these bills are going to be used to score the legislators themselves about what they support. You know, do they support bigger government, smaller government, and that sort of thing. So I know it's very handy. So, let's go ahead and start at the top. The first bill that is on the radar this week, support HB 1251. It's a bill that Conduit supports, expanding the scope of practice for optometrists by State Representative John Eubanks. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this bill is, pretty straightforward. It expands the scope of practice for optometrists. Specifically allows them to perform some ophthalmic surgeries, but not some major surgeries. So, it's not, a huge leap forward. But, anything that expands the scope of practice obviously would increase the choices that a patient has, have their optometrist perform something rather than maybe having to go to a separate ophthalmologist. And so, the more choice that a patient has, the more economic freedom they have in that. So, that's a good bill, and that would decrease dependency on government. And so that's why it's on the scorecard this week as a support position.
Yeah, that's great. We're putting the graphic up there right now for our online audience. You can check it out, folks, at conduitnews.com, YouTube, or facebook.com/conduitnews. Okay, so the expansion of the optometrist scope of practice, that is a good thing. Definitely. Okay, so then the next one would be HB 1255. Tell us about State Representative Jim Dotson's bill.
So this bill is, similar, same as what was ran last session, but it would basically require any licensing board to adopt the least restrictive requirements for licensing, certification, when they're looking at someone coming from another state that had, a similar license in their state. So it's really talking here about reciprocity and how they're going to license someone and how someone can have reciprocity. So, first off, Paul, this would almost immediately be able to create some competition for those maybe looking to come to Arkansas and to work. So, hey, I can go there. They have the least, they have to adopt the least restrictive requirements for licensing. Now, it doesn't mean, okay, someone coming from another state has easier requirements. It's just, it can't be any more restrictive than kind of what's on the books for the license in the state. And so it could provide some more competition. We all know competition can always lower prices or boost the quality of services. And so more economic freedom for Arkansans. Another good thing with this Paul, any deregulation type bill, it's decreasing dependency on government, because instead it's relying on the free market and people's free choices, and they'll have greater access, hopefully, to all these various jobs out there that require a license.
Arkansas, I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the show. Arkansas does have some pretty stringent regulations as far as our licenses. I mean, we've got more licensing boards in the state of New York. Last time I checked, and maybe that's different now. I don't know, but what you're telling me is, Josh, that if you're living in another state and you're licensed in that state to do profession X, and you come to Arkansas is going to basically hold your license in that other state as an Arkansas license?
Yeah, well, it's going to, adopt the least restrictive requirement. So if you have a license, to be a cosmetologist maybe in another state, or it's depending on specific field, but if you have that license in another state and you want to come to Arkansas, the licensing board isn't going to be able to put up all these hurdles saying, no, we want to make it hard because we don't want new people in Arkansas. There's this, I think, idea that protectionism is a good idea, and protectionism meaning, well, we're going to protect our, in-state people who have been here rather than, well, let's do what's best for the consumer. Let's make people have the most choice possible, right?
Yeah.
And so this would just say, hey, when adopting, licensing requirements, when you're looking at people coming from out of state, you have to use the least restrictive possible.
Wow. Yeah, and that would lower prices for consumers too. So that certainly is always a good thing. Okay, on the graphic there, we've got an opposed bill next. We're going to save that for last. Let's go to this other bill, which would be SB 157, Senate Bill 157, the repeal of electrology licensure. This is Senator Bob Ballinger's bill. What does it do?
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a bill. It repeals the license that's required to be an electrologist. And so people don't know what electrologist is. I wasn't familiar with the term. I knew, it was a thing out there. Basically, these are people who are removing hair through a laser or a needle. So someone's just, removing hair through a needle. They're no longer going to have to go through, education and training requirements that maybe a full-blown cosmetologist would have to undergo. So again, it's a repeal of the licensure, and so we think this is a good thing. It decreases dependency on government, provides more choice to consumers, and thus provides more economic freedom to Arkansans.
Wow, yeah. So we kind of got a theme here about deregulation. Yeah, I guess, when you think about it, I wonder, do we know if the electrologists are in favor of this? Do they want their licensure repealed?
I'm not sure, but that's always a good question because people well, who wants this or who doesn't want it? I'm assuming they would want it, but there are instances sometimes, Paul, I know we talked about last week, an industry will come forward, an industry association, something like that will come forward and say, hey, we want more regulation because we want it to be more burdensome. We want it to be harder for people to break into the trade. That's called a barrier to entry. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure, where electrologists stand on this, but we know for consumers and for economic freedom in Arkansas, this is a deregulation bill. It's less dependency on government, and so I think a good bill.
Okay, so the last bill that Conduit supports is scoring positively for this week. Week number 2 is SB 166. This is Senator John Cooper's bill. Repeals the licensure of plant nursery workers. Tell us about this one.
Yes, so I didn't even know this was a license. There's so many licenses in Arkansas. And I was looking at a report that, Acre had put out, and they've got all the list of all the licenses, how burdensome they are, the average fees, the average estimated calendar days, and things like that. And nursery worker, it's not really high up on the list. It's actually next to last on the list, but nonetheless, it's repealing a license for people that work at a plant nursery. And so, it's not, so people are not confused. It's not a nursery worker that are taking care of their kids at a daycare, right? That's not what we're talking about here. The nursery worker, so working definitions of sale of florist stock, trees, shrubs, vines, buds.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy that if you want to grow plants and sell them, that you have to have a permission slip from the state to do so? That is insane to me.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that's going to be the easiest vote and decision ever. It's a pretty straightforward bill. It just straight out repeals this license. Again, not one of the more burdensome ones out there, but nonetheless, it repeals the licensure and thus is decreasing dependency on government. It's moving to a free market system, letting people choose their plant nursery, that they want without really having to worry about I guess is this safe? At some point, I guess people worried if people were providing safe bushes. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Arkansas's government really thinks it's got got to protect us from people who work in a greenhouse. I mean, come on, it's just ridiculous. Okay, so let's get to the one bill on the scorecard this week that Conduit opposes, HB 1260. It is a gas tax increase, been filed by State Representative Dan Douglas. We were talking about it, Josh, during the last half hour on the program. What can you tell us about this bill and why Conduit opposes HB 1260?
So this bill was just filed yesterday by Representative Dan Douglas, and we've heard a lot already at the beginning of the session that there's going to be some type of highway plan. This is a highway bill. This doesn't necessarily mean this is the highway plan that the governor's going to be behind or that is really going to be the one pushed. But nonetheless, Dan Douglas has filed this gas tax increase bill. So what this would do, Paul, one, the main thing it would do is it would create a new sales tax at the wholesale level on gasoline and diesel. It'd be a per gallon tax, and that would be determined by a formula. It would take the average wholesale price of gas for the region and multiply that by 3.5%. So I ran some numbers, and it looked like based on kind of where gas prices are now, it would be about a 6.97% per gallon tax. Now, it's important to remember this is going to be a new additional tax at the wholesale level. There's already a 21.8 cent per gallon tax at the retail level. So what you're looking at here is a form of double taxation, and this can grow, and actually it's designed to grow from year to year. And so then, of course, that money would be distributed 70% to state highways, 15% to county roads, and 15% to city roads.
When you say it's designed to grow every year, is that the index it to inflation that we've heard about, or is this? What do you mean by that?
No, it's not indexed to inflation. It's just designed to where if there's ever, for whatever reason, if the price of gasoline goes down, then they would use the year before rate. And so, since it's looking at the price of gasoline, and that's in the formula multiplied by 3.5%, it's guaranteed. It's going to be a guaranteed increase whatever the price of gas goes up. Because if it ever goes down, it's in the bill saying if the price goes down, we look at the last year's. Well,
that's not right. That's not right. So that actually is an outrage to me. It's ridiculous. Okay, well, it's pretty clear why Conduit would oppose this bill. I mean, it's taking more money from the people, right? I mean, that's the idea, is to go to the people, take more money, right?
Yep. At the end of the day, people would have less money. They're going to be paying more for gas, and it's really a way of double taxation on gas. We already have the highest. I think Tennessee's might be a little higher, but of all the other states that border Arkansas already has the highest gas tax. The price per gallon is 21.8 cents. And this would just be in addition to that. And so, that this is one way. There's not been a fiscal impact statement made, so it's unclear what the estimate of revenue to be put in. But one thing this bill does do, Paul, it's a little confusing, but they put into the statute, put into the bill here that the sale of used cars, that revenue from that may be used in the future to go and support roads. But there's a big but there, because the bill says it would only ever be triggered if and when general revenue of all sales and use tax exceeds $2.5 billion for the state. And just for context, in fiscal year 2018, the state from general revenue, sales, and use tax was $2.4 billion. So we're still over $500 million away from even hitting that number. And then, Paul, even if that number is hit, then just in the first year, then $30 million from used car sales revenue, not from all general revenue, but from used car sales revenue. would go towards highways.
I'm not really
very,
sure.
Very large hurdle.
Yeah, it
What's
is.
that?
But I'm just not sure why we wouldn't have the revenue from used car sales already going to our roads. Like, why not? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. Well, and that's what a lot of people, I think have been debating. Hey, instead of raising a tax, let's use existing revenue and just prioritize that money and put it towards roads. And so some people have thrown out that idea. So what it seems like is this is kind of getting at that, but it has such a high threshold. I'm not sure if and when it would be reached. I guess, at some point down the road, as long as, the economy keeps growing, maybe 10 years from now we'll hit 2 points.
Well, I tell you what's interesting about this. Conduit opposes it because it's a tax increase. Governor Asa Hutchinson is quoted in the Gazette is that he opposes it, not necessarily because it's a tax increase, but he opposes it because it is going to take general revenue at some point, and he opposes going into general revenue to fund our roads, which is strange. I mean, the reason I say it's strange is because we are already paying. Agreement is uniform. I mean, it is bipartisan. It may be the most bipartisan issue in the entire state that people would like to have roads and they'd like to have them better. I mean, that's just what people agree to. That, hey, this is one of government's responsibilities. Now I could get into a debate about how it shouldn't be, but I won't. Most people think that so we're already giving government money to do these things. And yet we are doing all these other projects that do not have that level of consensus. And we won't even look at those programs and say, you know what, we don't need to be funding this, or we need to cut here a little bit, take that money, and then maybe take all of the money from used car sales and put that towards roads so we don't have to go back to the people and ask for more money. I mean, that's the kind of creativity that I think the people would really support, and they would really cheer these legislators on. So let's hope that the conversation gets started and we go in that direction. That's my hope, anyway.
Yeah, I wanted to just clarify something. I think I misspoke a little bit, Paul. The amount that it would trigger out is $2.5 billion, right? And in fiscal year, the general revenue is $2.448 billion. So it is a little closer than, it's not $500 million away. It's more about $50 million away.
$50 million away, not $500 million.
Correct that.
Okay.
So that would be, probably in the next couple of years. But then from that, in the first year, $30 million from used car sales tax revenue would go. But the big thing here that people need to know about is this would create a new sales tax at the wholesale level, in addition to what they're already paying at the retail level in the 21.8 cents per gallon.
Yeah. And when you say double taxation, that really is exactly what it is. You're basically taking a product that people need and you're finding a different way to tax it when we already are paying tax on it. Hey, Josh Waters, we got to take a break, sir, but that's the Conduit scorecard for week number 2. I really appreciate you coming on and going over it with us, sir.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Paul. Have a good one.
All righty. Thanks, Josh. We'll see you in a bit. And we're going to take a break, folks, and be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Getting rid of those free speech zones, protecting our organizations and such that are on campus. That should be filed this week, and I look forward to that passing.
Now, so there's another one. There's another freedom of speech bill that has been filed as well. That's already been filed. This one with this. So, do you know about the other one? What's the difference between?
Well, Representative Hammer and I both had bills on that.
Okay.
And we got together, and now there'll be one bill that goes forward.
Okay, so it's going to be one.
Yeah, it's part of that good legislative process where you have people who both have an idea about freedom and liberty who sit down together and work through it. The big question out there, Paul, there's a continuum. What kind of language do you allow that doesn't cause a disruption on campus? To use foul language, and there are words that can be used, language that can be used, insightful language that can be used, that can be disruptive on a...
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News, The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs, as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. Let's see here. We always want to thank Josh Waters for coming on the program. Coming up, we're up against a hard break here in about a minute, but I do want to tell you that coming up, we are going to be interviewing the chair of the Libertarian Party of Arkansas. We're going to talk about a new bill that's been filed. Headline from yesterday: State legislators' bill raises threshold for ballot access. Libertarians criticize plan proposed by Senator Trent Gardner. We're going to go over that bill, and we will be talking with Dr. Michael Packo next.
Up, and I have running legislation with UAMS that deals with UAMS, and UAMS lost $30 million last year. They
when you say lost, you mean like lost it or lost it?
Well, that's another discussion. They were $30 million in the red, and some of it was intentional. I don't want to go into the details of that, but they have a new chancellor now, and I've been working very closely with them, because that $30 million is taxpayer money. That's money that the taxpayers are paying for health care. They're paying to educate our doctors, and UAMS is a great institution. They're the only institution we have in the state, or well, one of the only now, educating our doctors. So when we lose money in that program, that's $30 million that did not go towards educating physicians in our state. Again, our new chancellor, Dr. Patterson, I'm working closely with him, and I hope that we can have legislation come out of this that will support UAMS and help them to at least break even. I don't want to go into all the details, but there are lobbyists that are hired to kill this kinds of legislation, just like the advanced practice nurse legislation. Paul, it's no different from what happened in the nursing home industry. They are so powerful, and the medical society lobby is so powerful that they don't need all the votes. They just need enough to kill it, which is only usually the difference between 11 votes or 9 votes. And if you are a legislator and you're running for office, you depend on those campaign donations. And guess who makes a lot of campaign donations?
Yeah.
Or you have an opponent, just like I did.
Yeah, from the medical community.
From the medical community. They can afford to triple my spending.
They outspent you 3 to 1.
Me 3 to 1.
Yeah, you still won, though.
Still won. But that's because the people got out and got engaged. They talked about the issues. They learned about the issues. They held him accountable for his words when he was untruthful and out lied. And the Jonesboro Sun had to run an article on that. That's what we're up against in the freedom argument, to allow people to be free and make decisions on their own. There's a strong lobby opposed to that in all that medical community, whether it's nursing homes, the medical society, and we face a strong uphill battle. So I hope people will get engaged with their local legislators.
I think people we've been talking about how people do want honest government, and, when you do have these big programs or these big industries that the government is already heavily involved in, if we're going to have it, and we're going to have
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show today. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. It's caught my eye the other day as I was going over the headlines. John Moritz piece in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. State legislators' bill raises threshold for ballot access. And this has drawn criticism from libertarians. Here now is the chairman of the State Libertarian Party of Arkansas, Dr. Michael Packo. Michael, welcome back to the program, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, good morning. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, sir. So let's get your reaction to this bill. Why do you think it's necessary? Or why do you think it's unnecessary, rather?
Well, I think it's unnecessary in that it puts an unnecessary constraint on the ability of third parties to get their names on the ballot, put their candidates on the ballot. It's been billed as, we need to retain space on the ballot, that we don't want it to be overcrowded. But that notion is just absurd. In 2018, over half of the seats in the state legislature were unopposed. There would have been more, but libertarian candidates were in some otherwise uncontested races. But the point is that in those circumstances, nominees of the two major parties coast right into office without their names even being printed on the ballot. And so there's certainly not an issue with too much competition for public office, but quite the opposite. If we're going to make changes to the election laws, it should be to open the process, not shut it down.
So you see this as essentially trying to limit the competition and limit the people's choices when it comes to going and voting?
Well, yes, I can't see any other rationale for the idea. It does nothing but make it more difficult for third parties to get on the ballot. And the fact that it has an emergency clause in it just makes it all the more evident that the intention of the bill is to stifle competition in the 2020 election. And that's to the benefit of incumbent politicians and their entrenched political parties, and to the detriment of new political parties, of third parties, and of the voters having a choice in the election.
So the Libertarian Party of Arkansas, in order and I know you guys fell just short. Mark West got 2.9%. I thought he would for sure get 3%, but he got 2.9%. Had he gotten the 3%, you guys would have automatically qualified for ballot access this next year. And I think maybe you think that has something to do with it, that you guys got real close to not having to, what is a kind of a waste of time. I mean, it's not a waste of time, but you got real close to not having to gather signatures at all.
Well, that's right. It was a heartbreaking result, coming that close, something like 890 votes short of qualifying as a political party. And that's actually one of the initiatives that we've put out there, is that we believe that the standard for maintaining status as a political party ought to be broadened, so that there's a better possibility that once on the ballot, new political parties will be retained on the ballot. Of course, our proposal's gotten little traction. Instead, we get this monstrosity, Senate Bill 163, which would make it more difficult for us to get on the ballot in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was going to ask, how much money does the Libertarian Party of Arkansas spend getting signatures? The threshold used to be 10,000, or it still is. It's 10,000 right now. So how much money did you spend getting that?
10,000 signatures, right. Over the past couple of years, past couple cycles rather, our average has been about $30,000 for all the expenses associated with it. So, I mean, that's not a huge amount, but it's not a small change either. To raise it from 10,000 to what this bill would do would raise it effectively to about 27,000 signatures. That would make it 2.5 times more difficult and more expensive to get on the ballot. There's also something I wanted to mention here, is there's a constitutional flaw in this proposal, too. And, back in 2006, this scheme of 3% of votes for getting on the ballot was specifically overruled by federal courts. So that ruling is relevant here. They're basically proposing to go back to a system that has already been ruled unconstitutional by the federal courts.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have that? Do you know that case off the top of your head? The name of it?
Yeah, it's Green Party of Arkansas versus Daniels in 2006. That's Charlie Daniels in his capacity as Secretary of State at the time. In that, the court ruled, here's a quote: "The 3% requirement to certify a new political party violates plaintiffs' associational rights guaranteed under the United States Constitution." So it doesn't get much more straightforward than that.
Interesting. So you think Senator Trent Garner's bill here to try to, kind of limit competition, increase the threshold, you think it's already been ruled unconstitutional?
I do. Well, it's not particularly the proposal, but
not the specific bill.
Scheme
yeah.
that existed over a decade ago, yes.
Wow.
Matter of fact, that ruling was the impetus for changing the law to make it 10,000 signature requirement in the first place.
Okay. Well, that certainly is news to me. That's pretty incredible. Then I wonder. I know people are listening. Maybe there'll be an amendment to it or something like that. But I will say this: I think more choices are a good thing. I think there's a lot of Arkansans out there that are tired of the sole two-party rule. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I tend to vote for more Republicans than I do Libertarians. That's just the way I tend to vote that way.
Sure.
But I wouldn't. I would never be opposed to allowing more choices on the ballot.
Well, that's right. And I'm an economist, so I see competition as a good thing. It strengthens the system. It keeps it sharp. So to try to eliminate competition in the political process is no better than trying to eliminate competition in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, so we're going to keep an eye on this bill. And again, we're talking with Dr. Michael Packo. He is the chair of the Libertarian Party of Arkansas. Just real quick, I know this is kind of a random question, Dr. Packo, but do you have any other? Are there any other pieces of legislation out there that interest you or that you're following at all when it comes to Arkansas politics right now?
Well, I believe there's another bill out there that I haven't tracked carefully, but it would basically change our electoral system to one like California with the top 2 primaries. I'm not sure what the status of that one is. This one's kind of consumed my attention recently.
Yeah.
So,
is that what's called a jungle primary? Is that what that's called?
I think some call it that, yeah.
Okay.
But again, the problem with Arkansas is there's not too many candidates on the ballot. There's too few. So any of these electoral reforms that are intended to kind of restrict access to either the primary or general election ballot just don't make much sense.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I really appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. It's always great to have you on, Dr. Michael Packo, and we'd love to do it again sometime. And when there's new developments on this bill, I'd love to have you on to talk about it.
Great. Okay, fine.
All righty. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Michael Packo. It's always great to have him on. He's the chairman of the Libertarian Party. He's also an economist. And, we've had him on to do some review of Arkansas's economic numbers before as well, so we'll probably do that again soon also. The number, 870-275-9799, if you would like to call or text, 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break, going to reset here, and we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Coming up, and I have running legislation with UAMS that deals with UAMS, and UAMS lost $30 million last year. They
when you say lost, you mean like lost it or lost it?
Well, that's another discussion. They were $30 million in the red, and some of it was intentional. I don't want to go into the details of that, but they have a new chancellor now, and I've been working very closely with them because that $30 million is taxpayer money. That's money that the taxpayers are paying for health care. They're paying to educate our doctors, and UAMS is a great institution. They're the only institution we have in the state, or well, one of the only now, educating our doctors. So when we lose money in that program, that's $30 million that did not go towards educating physicians in our state. That's so. Again, our new chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been
working closely with him.
This is ASA News, the Parrot, with breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock.
I'm Bob Baloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, the Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? Revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. The new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? Revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government,
The government better not tax our patience.
The more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patience will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
You know, the term shameless, ladies and gentlemen, the term shameless, meaning you are one who is without shame. Let me give you an example of what having no shame means. On March 29th of 2017, State Representative Josh Miller and Senator Brian King appeared before the House State Agencies and Governmental Affairs Committee to present SB 175 of 2017. The bill would have greatly increased transparency by requiring taxpayer-funded Medicaid entities and public officials to disclose their business relationships. The bill failed with 7 aye votes and 5 nay votes. It takes 11 aye votes to pass a bill out of a House committee. If you look at the photo of that vote, because it was a roll call vote, you'll notice a very peculiar, conspicuous no vote next to State Representative Jeff Wardlaw's name. And if that doesn't seem significant to you, then you probably haven't heard the news that State Representative Jeff Wardlaw used his position as a legislator as the head of the powerful House Public Health Committee to, what I believe, secretly enrich himself as well as his now former secret business partner, nursing home owner David Norsworthy. David Norsworthy is also under investigation for sending a wire transfer to convicted felon and former Senator Jake Files for the amount of $80,000. The money was sent shortly after a different bill was filed that would have favored special interests like the nursing home industry. Here is the interesting part. When State Representative Jeff Wardlaw decided to vote against a Medicaid disclosure bill that would have required him to disclose his secret business partner, David Norsworthy. His excuse or his reasoning for voting against that bill in 2017 was this, and I quote, "Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been texting back and forth with a few agencies here in state government, and, as you know, I'm a consistent no voter on big government issues. And I had this discussion the other day with somebody about this bill, and I got confirmation of it now. If this bill passes in its current form," he said, "it's going to create a whole new division at DHS, which is, let me remind you, big government. That agency going to be responsible for having all disclosure form filed. So I just want to remind you guys that want to go home and say that you're for smaller government and lessening government, that when you vote this through, you're voting for big government. Thank you, Mr. Chair." End quote. That is the actual quote. That is why he voted. All the while we know now the real reason, because we're not stupid. So in hindsight, Wardlaw's reasoning for voting against a bill that would have required him to disclose his secret business dealings seems dishonest at best. Also, consider the possibility big government itself enabled him to hide from the public his corrupt dealings as a Medicaid provider and lawmaker in the first place. Now that the public knows about what State Representative Wardlaw was really protecting, his corrupt livelihood, or at least the appearance of one, the Arkansas General Assembly must act to make sure this never happens again. If you're not convinced of what I just said, I highly recommend you not only read Jeff Wardlaw's statement, but you watch the video for yourself. Most people would assume what State Representative Jeff Wardlaw did was criminal. Sadly, it was legal. And that's why we must have meaningful ethics reform. I went back and I found the video of State Representative Jeff Wardlaw saying this exact thing, and it's up on YouTube, and I want to play it for you right now. Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been texting back and forth with a few agencies here in state government, and as you guys know, I'm a pretty consistent no voter on big government issues. And I had this discussion the other day with somebody about this bill, and I got confirmation of it now. If this bill passes in its current form, it's going to create a whole new division at DHS, which is, let me remind you, big government. That agency is going to be responsible for having all these disclosure forms filed. So I just want to remind you guys that want to go home and say that you're for small government and lessening government, that when you vote this through, you're voting for big government. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Stop. So he said all of that, knowing that if the bill he was voting and speaking against passed, he would have to disclose, or he would be found out, or he would be in violation of the rules if he continued to keep secret who his business partner was, a nursing home owner, and this whole his business, Mallard Medical and everything else. And by the way, he did not, on his disclosure forms, he didn't disclose that Mallard Medical was getting Medicaid money either. So and now we know it was like to the tune of $900,000. All of this we now know. I mean, you talk about generating skeptics of government and politicians in general. And you know what? I feel sorry for anybody on that committee that was honestly opposed to that bill. Because thanks to Jeff Wardlaw, you can thank Jeff Wardlaw for making the rest of you who voted no on that bill look suspicious now. Go thank him. Thank you, State Representative Jeff Wardlaw. Because of him, and because of him actually having something to hide and knowing that he would have had to disclose it had it passed, he makes everybody on that committee who voted against it look like they're hiding something as well. And so get ready for the microscope, because it's going to come. There's no way it can't. There's no way it can't when you listen to his explanation. And I want you to rewind it back, because those of you who are watching this, he is reading this off of his phone. He has been sent this. I don't know who sent it to him. It might have been David Norsworthy himself. But he is basically saying, I need a reason to vote against this bill and it not look like it has something to do with my medical supply company. And so what does he do? He goes for low-hanging fruit Republican Party talking points and conservative buzzwords and claims that he's for limited government and that this bill would increase it. All the way back. If that's not a desperate man from 2017, and we put a caption on this video, because while he's talking, it is important to know the real reason he's saying this is because he had a secret Medicaid business partner he didn't want the public to know about. Go ahead, hit play.
I've been texting back and forth with a few agencies here in state government.
He's going to start reading his response here in just a minute.
As you guys know, I'm a pretty consistent no voter on big government issues.
Good improv there.
And I had this discussion the other day with somebody about this bill, and I got confirmation of it now. If this bill passes in its current form, it's going to create a whole new division at DHS, which is, let me remind you, big government. That agency is going to be responsible for having all these disclosure forms filed. So I just want to remind you guys that want to go home and say that you're for small government and lessening government, that when you vote this through, you're voting for big government.
Stop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And it's the big government that already is there that is enabling him to feed off the taxpayer. That's the irony here. That's the irony. That is absolutely maddening. All right, now go back, because I want to get the last part of this video, because State Representative Josh Miller cannot believe that Jeff Wardlaw said what he said. And this, again, flashback
Representative
to
Miller, you're
2017. He said,
yes, sir. Thank you. Just to respond to a couple things, Representative Gray, you brought up a legitimate concern. However, I don't have the bill where I can see it right now to show you the exact line, but there is exemptions made for folks who are being seen as patients. That is in the bill. It's very clear. Representative Wardlaw, I appreciate your anti-big government stance. I think I've got a pretty clear record of being the same way myself.
Much more so.
For someone to say that this is going to create a whole new division at DHS is absolutely laughable. That is laughable. I will personally make the commitment to DHS for the expense. We're talking about DHS has to provide a disclosure form of paper. All they have to do is provide a sheet of paper. If we are so pathetic in the state of Arkansas that we have to form a whole new branch of government to get enough people together to come up with a sheet of paper, we're in worse shape than I thought.
So, State Representative Josh Miller there calling it laughable, okay, saying that it's laughable. Interesting. Why would Representative Wardlaw make a laughable claim? Well, because he was hiding a Medicaid business that he didn't want people. I mean, you can't. I mean, come on. That is rich right there. That is rich. Man, can you imagine what great videos we're gonna have to go back to when we have like a whole session's worth of Senate committee videos? Fantastic. All right, folks. We're going to end the show. Arkansas, thanks for starting your morning with us, and we'll see you tomorrow. Be safe.